Hello, everybody. This is the Ringo Klecko Sports Report. My name is Timothy Connolly, and today we are joined by none other than.
Ringo Klecko.
That's right, and we are here to bring you today's top stories in the news of sports world. We don't cover all major sports of the Ringo Klecko Sports Report, but we do touch upon each of the four basic food groups of professional sports in America, which means we're going to blow right through some news from the NFL into the MLB, into the NBA, and then right into the NHL. And let's start things off with some big football news. Now, the NFL recently announced their international schedule travel plans for the upcoming season ahead, and it looks like there's going to be at least one team making more than one trip across the Atlantic Ocean next season. More than one trip. To the best of my knowledge, this is a first in the NFL. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the news is being reported with regards to this. ESPN is saying that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to become the very first team in NFL history to play not once, but twice overseas during the same regular season. That's right. You heard it here, or maybe you heard it on ESPN when they reported it earlier this week. But it does look like they're going to play two games in London coming up next season. And it looks like also the Miami Dolphins are going to be facing the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs in a major marquee matchup of the NFL international games that were announced Wednesday by the league. Now, also, it's interesting to note that you've got the Dolphins, you've got the Falcons, you've got the Ravens, and you've got the Colts. These are all teams that have been added to the list of playing outside of the United States next season, joining the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, the Tennessee Titans, and the New England Patriots. Wow, there's a whole lot of games going on, and it looks like the international slate is going to kick off in London with a Week 4 clash between the Falcons and the Jaguars at October 1st at Wembley Stadium. I love the idea of Wembley Stadium being a thing in England again. I remember when it used to really be a thing back in the day. I'm going back to 1985 when I think about Live Aid and all of the great concerts that used to happen there. But at any rate, here we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars, who's the first team in the NFL ever to play not one but two games overseas. And I have to wonder how that's going to rough up that team. From a fatigue slash jet lag standpoint, I don't know. Ringo Klecko, help me out here. What do you think about that? What sort of impact is all of that travel going to have on the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Well, when the Beatles went down to London, oh, they gave us such an attitude. I tell you, Timothy Connolly. I mean, they didn't want to know anybody from the north, so we had this the attitude that we're just going to show them we don't care. So these Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm not really sure what that's all about, mate, but they just got to go there. They got to do their thing. Because I'll tell you one thing: the posh people down in London, they're so full of themselves with their fish and chips and the new king and Piccadilly Circus. They don't like anyone that's coming from anywhere, whether it's from the northern part of the United Kingdom or for someone named Jacksonville.
Well, it seems to me that they've got it all sorted out, and I like your perspective there, my friend. Now, it's also worth mentioning with the NFL season coming up, there's also going to be some action happening in Germany. Week 9 is going to feature a matchup between the Dolphins and the Chiefs. That's going to fall on the 5th of November. And there's also going to be a matchup between the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots, also in Germany on November 12th. Both games are going to be played at Frankfurt Stadium. It's too bad they won't be playing any games at Hamburg. You know Hamburg, don't you, Ringo Klecko?
I sure do. Yeah, yeah. I could tell you, mate, that we went into Hamburg Young Boys who came out old men. We had a lot of fun down there and lots of pills, a lot of knives and fights with Gene Vincent and the like, Little Richard. A lot of fun down there. I don't know how much what can tell you about Frankfurt, Germany, but if the mates from those teams do get over to Hamburg on the Reeperbahn, they better get some penicillin, if you know what I mean, because they're going to come home with something extra. One thing that does remind me very much about when Ringo first went over with the Hurricanes back in 1960, the first person he ran into that spoke the Queen's English, that was Stu Sutcliffe of the Beatles. And Ringo took Stu out to get pancakes that first morning. So there you had Ringo Starr having pancakes with Stu Sutcliffe. Ringo never knew at that moment he was going to be a Beatle, and Stu Sutcliffe never knew that he was going to be in heaven in 2 years. So imagine all them NFL teams are on there at that breakfast place getting breakfast with Ringo and Stu from the Beatles. That would have been gear.
Imagine also Pete Best having no idea he was about to get shit canned.
Now, he wasn't there. He wasn't invited. Pete never came around. Pete just showed up for the gigs, or if he was with his girlfriend somewhere on a boat, I think, shagging her.
Well, we better get back to the sports, Ringo Klecko.
Oh, it's the best sport of all.
As far as Hamburg and Frankfurt are concerned, by the way, just curious, is Hamburg where hamburgers come from, and is Frankfurt where Frankfurters come from?
I wouldn't know anything about that, mate. You have to ask George Martin. He's the educated man.
All right, I better make myself a note so I don't forget. And all right, that's been sorted.
But get some nice
Interesting.
fish and chips down up in Liverpool. I'll tell you that much.
Hmm.
Fresh and finger pie, if you know what I mean.
Well, I do know what you mean. As for our audience, one can only hope that they know what you mean, my friend. Now, one last thing to touch upon regarding the NFL's international slate coming up for the next season. It was announced that there will be no international games in Mexico in 2023 season, the 2023-24 season, I mean, because there are renovations taking place at Estadio Azteca in Mexico City.
That's no loss, mate. I never had a
And there
big
we
love for
have it.
Mexico City.
Well, no games in Mexico this time around, but that's okay. No sweat. So
You know,
that's the
the
big news.
one American football game that John from the Beatles went to, as you know, was in 1972. Is over there in Los Angeles, being interviewed by Howard Cosell on that football. That was also when he was in his so-called lost weekend with May Pang, away from the misery and controlling hypnotism of Yoko. And that's when he recorded Walls and Bridges and was getting thrown out of the Troubadour, having fun with Harry Nielsen, Keith Moon, and so forth. Yeah, and he took it in a football game with the LA Rams at the LA Coliseum. Didn't make it down to Mexico, stayed in LA.
I'm having a hard time believing that the Rams no longer play in LA. But wait a minute. Aren't they the Los Angeles Rams of Anaheim? Oh no, I'm thinking the Angels. I can't keep up. All right. Well, it's time now to discuss Major League Baseball, and big news happening in the world of MLB brings us to Oakland, California. The fans of the Oakland Athletics are planning a major boycott to keep the A's from moving to Las Vegas. As for how effective this is going to be, who knows? But Casino.org recently reported this week that Oakland A's fans are planning a reverse boycott during their home game on Tuesday, June 13th against the Tampa Bay Rays. So instead of staying away from the game, all of the fans are going to try to pack as many fans into Oakland Coliseum as possible to show the ownership, hey, the fan base is still there. Hey, we're the real fans. You can't take our team away from us. You can't move to Las Vegas. So, how about that? Now, the A's threw a curveball this week by switching their Las Vegas plans to build a new stadium at the Tropicana in Las Vegas in preparation for the 2027 season. And so it does look like, even though the A's are not planning on going anywhere out of Oakland until 2027, I do suppose that the possibility does exist, especially if the A's are only going to be packing in 2,500 fans for each home game. I mean, that can't go on. And so I certainly can't blame the ownership for wanting to make a change with moving the team out of Oakland and taking a chance in Las Vegas, where the AAA affiliate team already has a home stadium. That's the AAA Aviators. And so, Ringo Klecko, what do you make of all this with regards to the Oakland A's fan base and their plans for a reverse boycott? Are they just wasting their time, or do you think this could be something that's really going to send a message to the ownership there?
Well, me, Timothy, everybody wants to go back to high school, right? I mean, the Oakland A's, they've been there since the 60s over in Oakland. And when we came to tour the states, they were in the Kansas City A's, and that's where we actually had a couple of baseball games. They brought all the bats and balls and gloves for us. We didn't know what we were doing. We're all cricket players, mate. But you know, the Philadelphia A's, the Kansas City A's, the Oakland A's, the Las Vegas A's. I think you had your glory there with Charlie Finney and MC Hammer. So that was really the glory days of the A's, and people want to remember that. They want to go back to that, but everything dies, everything's reborn. So when we finished Hard Day's Night, we said, well, what we're going to do, we don't know. We made Beatles for Sale, and we were touring, making movies. And then we figured out, all right, we'll do Rubber Soul. And it was different. And some people didn't like it. They thought it was too much, of a change. And they didn't want to, they went over to Hermits or whatever, but we just kept doing what we're going to do. So, this reverse boycott, God bless them, but I don't think that the owners of the Oakland A's are really going to hear them. Just like the people down in London, they didn't want to hear the Beatles back in 1962, January 1st at Decca. They just didn't want to hear us from nothing.
Well, it looks like these fans of the Oakland A's are trying to convince the owner of the team, Mr. John Fisher, to sell the A's to a local business person who can afford to get a new ballpark built and keep the team in Oakland somehow. So they're trying to get ownership to sell the team so that the team can stay in Oakland. It doesn't look like if John Fisher retains ownership of the team that the team can possibly stay in Oakland. I just don't see it. And but you never know what can happen. It's interesting to note, by the way, that the A's won a World Series in 1910. They did it also in 1911, 1913, 1929, 1930, 1972, 1973, 1974, and 1989. No World Series victories for them since 1989, though, and they're dead last in the American League right now. Their record is 8 wins and 29 losses. Oof. The good news about a record of 8 and 29, I guess, is that eventually it resets to zero when a new season starts. That's all well and good, but for now, the fans have to deal with this, and the owner has to deal with the nonsense of seeing paid attendance of 2,000 people per home game. Oh well, maybe the reverse boycott will pack the stadium for the first time in a while. That's supposed to happen a month from now. They're talking about having June 13th be the big day for that. Why they want to plan a reverse boycott so far in advance, I don't get it. They should just start boycotting, well, reverse boycotting immediately if they were going to do this and really be serious about it. But anyway, such is life. So that's the big news in Major League Baseball. And oh, Ringo Klecko, you're not going to believe this. I know this is our pilot episode and all, but it looks like we've just gotten some listener mail. This is astonishing. Looking through these, I think we'd better take a good look at some of them and react to a couple of them if that's okay. What do you think? Would that be okay?
If it's a letter from Alan Klein, I'm not responding.
Well, then let's see. These letters don't appear to be addressed to you specifically. They're just addressed to us, but I'll certainly be happy to take a look and see what we've got here. Okay. There's a letter that came in from Marco Yolo of Allentown, Pennsylvania, and Marco writes, apparently because they lost so many players to World War II, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles both combined their teams to form a new team called the Steagles during the 1943 NFL season. And now I want a Steagles jersey. Do you guys know where I can find one? Well, thanks for writing in, Marco. You came to the right place. We are, after all, the experts on the Steagles 1943 NFL season. And I do know for a fact, and Ringo Klecko can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do know for a fact that you can find Steagles jerseys on eBay. So not to be going around giving Steagles jerseys a plug, but to answer your question, eBay is the first place I would recommend to look for that sort of thing, Marco. So good luck. And even if you can't find Steagles jerseys, you should still be able to find that old classic, well, I call it classic, Steagles logo that had the eagle and then the steel girder underneath it. And it had the sort of three diamond thing that the Steelers have on their logo, I guess to represent the three rivers. I think that's what it represents. Anyway, I hope that answers your question, Marco. Ringo, do you have anything to add?
Oh, it's well documented that when we wrote Dr. Robert, that was a special clue, special code. It was about we wanted the audience to think that it was about the Steagles. That if you called Dr. Robert and take a drink from a special cup, that you would merge two Pennsylvania franchises into one with one and a half logos and have some kind of Midland 250 winning percentage during the war years. So yeah, I think if you play Dr. Robert off of Revolver backwards, then you'll get the link to the eBay to get the Steagles jersey.
That's fantastic news. I didn't realize that you could do all of that. So how about that, Marco? And a treat for our listeners out there as well. Well, we've got one other letter here to take a look at during this impromptu listener mail segment, which we were not expecting to be experiencing during our pilot episode of the Ringo Klecko Sports Report. But here it is, and this next letter comes all the way from Professor Don Utt of Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Cambridge, Massachusetts. And the good professor writes, was Howard Cosell as smart as Howard Cosell said Howard Cosell was? That's a very interesting question, Professor. I do not recall how smart Howard Cosell said he was in so many words, but he did convey a certain je ne sais quoi that could be categorized as smarts or intelligence through his mannerisms and through his body language and through his diction and his ability to enunciate his words as he spoke. I am going to say that yes, Howard Cosell was every inch as smart as Howard Cosell said he was in not so many words. Ringo Klecko, anything to add?
Well, as John famously said, either I'm a genius or I'm mad, and it doesn't make a difference. And what Howard said to me at that Rams game in 1972 was that he was not mad, that he was a genius, and in fact, he was even smarter. Howard Cosell was even smarter than Howard Cosell said Howard Cosell was. That he was actually imbuing in a momentarily moment of humility when he only said that he was the most brilliant sportscaster in the history of broadcasting by far. That was minimizing his vast intelligence and grasp of the game.
Interesting. And you said this occurred at the 1972 Rams game?
Yes, yes. When we were discussing the Iolian cadensic form of not a second time, he said that it was a fine ditty and that he was a super genius.
Was that the overtime game against the Titans? Oh, no, wait. The Titans had already changed their name to the Jets by 1972. But that was the overtime game, wasn't it?
It was the overtime game, and as you know, it was in between the end of regulation and overtime that Merlin Olsen of the Rams changed out of his Rams uniform for the last time and got into his father Murphy outfit for the first time. And they asked me to write the theme song for that, which I was happy to do.
Just an unforgettable moment in sports and an unforgettable moment in music too. Thank you very much for writing that theme song. It's been in our hearts and minds everywhere since then. And okay, well, those were a couple of interesting letters. And hey, if you've got any more letters to drop us a line with, go right ahead and do so in the comment section right here below in YouTube. And but that was a lot of fun. We'll put these off to the side. There's a whole bunch of them. My goodness. Anyway, moving back on to the sports news. Now, up next in the world of the NBA, it is the postseason in the National Basketball Association, and it is easily worth mentioning what has been happening with regards to the world of the National Basketball Association. Now, basketballinsiders.com recently stated that all NBA teams for the 2023 season. Voting results are in, and it looks like Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid are headlining the first team, which is interesting. It's always interesting to have a look at the voting results for the all NBA teams, and it looks like with that particular guard from the Dallas Mavericks and the center from the Philadelphia 76ers leading up the first team selections, it's worth taking a look at the rest of the players who got picked out to fill out the first team. We've got Oklahoma City Thunder guard Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, alongside Boston Celtics forward Jason Tatum and Milwaukee Bucks wing Giannis Antetokounmpo, also making the All-NBA first team. Now, Giannis was the only unanimous first team selection this season, and Jason Tatum received 92 of the first team votes. Embiid garnered 87 of the votes. Gilgeous-Alexander got 63 of them, and Luka got 60 of them. Interesting stuff. And also, it's worth mentioning since the playoffs are happening now, as per more than just one or two NBA betting sites, the Denver Nuggets are right now the #1 favorite to win the championship. So if you are a betting person, go ahead and have a look at which sport books are still showing great odds for the LA Lakers and the 76ers. And by the way, let's also take a look and see what it says for the All NBA second team selections. We've got Golden State Warriors guard Steph Curry. We've got Celtics wing Jaylen Brown. Cleveland Cavaliers guard Donovan Mitchell, who was almost a New York Knick, by the way. Not to mention Miami Heat forward Jimmy Butler and Denver Nuggets center Nikola Jokic. And third team selections. Portland Trailblazers guard Damian Lillard, Sacramento Kings guard De'Aaron Fox, LA Lakers forward LeBron James, New York Knicks wing Julius Randle, and Kings forward slash center Domantas Sabonis. So we've got the voting results in for the All NBA teams. Congratulations to each of those players who got voted in. And Ringo Klecko, what do you make of all that?
Well, when you're determining the All-Star balloting by the fan vote, it can be unpredictable. Who would have thought that Ringo would be the first Beatle to score #1 hits in America right after the Beatles broke up? But you know what? He did. He did a whole bunch of them. Obviously, he's got help from George, writing and producing and playing on all those records. And it was John that had the last one, and that had a lot to do with Elton John. Whatever gets you through the night, you know. This goes back to our sports days back in Liverpool. When the only one in the Beatles that actually could play any sports was Pete Best, and so we had to get rid of him.
Well, he was making the rest of them all look bad. Can't have that. And excellent. Well, that's what's happening in the NBA. If you've been enjoying the postseason action right now in the NBA, please continue to do so. The action is just getting started with the conference finals right around the corner. And now in the National Hockey League, what is happening here? Well, it's interesting to have a look at what's going on with the Toronto Maple Leafs in this NHL postseason right now. Revisiting every 3-0 comeback team in postseason history for the NHL is the topic of a recent CBS Sports article where it says, revisiting every 3-0 comeback in postseason history as the Maple Leafs try to turn their series around, there is still very slight hope for the Maple Leafs. And it goes on to say here that down 3-0 to the Florida Panthers in the second round, it is the Toronto Maple Leafs who are badly in need of some hope. In NHL history, teams have faced a 3-0 series deficit 203 times, setting aside the 199 teams that failed to come from behind. There are 4 occasions that the Maple Leafs and their fans can look to for optimism. Yes, it happened in 1942 when the Toronto Maple Leafs came back from a 3-0 deficit to defeat the Detroit Red Wings in the Stanley Cup final. What a heartbreaker that was for Motor City. It also happened in 1975 when the New York Islanders defeated the Pittsburgh Penguins in the second round of the playoffs, down 3-0. Incredible. That particular comeback in history came 33 years, I'm sorry, after the first time it happened. And let's see, the next time it happened after 1975 was 2010, when the Philadelphia Flyers came back down 3-0 to defeat the Boston Bruins in the second round. What an embarrassment that was for the Boston Bruins. And lastly, and not too far down the path behind us, only 9 years ago, it was the San Jose Sharks who fell to the LA Kings. The Sharks had a 3-0 lead over the LA Kings, and then they choked. So There were 4 times when it happened. Can the Toronto Maple Leafs make it happen this season? Ringo Klecko, what do you think?
Well, I don't know anything about that, mate, but I do know the difference between 3 and 4. Obviously, 1959 was a big year. The J Page three was just George, John, and Paul, pretty much doing a whole lot of nothing. They didn't write any new songs, and they would play in very few gigs, and it pretty much would have petered out. They were very dejected. They kicked out everyone out of the Quarrymen, and it really was only because of Stu Sutcliffe, the artist, winning what today would be the equivalent of about $3,000 for selling one of his paintings. That the three guys, George, John, and Paul, just cornered Stu and said, "You're our bass player now," and had him buy what would have been today like $1,000 bass. And that's they got him into the new Quarrymen. That name lasted for about 5 minutes before Stu and John renamed their group the Beatles. So again, that fourth game, or that fourth member of the band, it's what it's all about. And if this Maple Leafs can't come back and score 4 more games in a row, then they'll be dead in the water. They'll never be bigger than Elvis, mate.
Well, and there you have it, folks. And this has been the Ringo Klecko Sports Report. Signing off, my name is Timothy Connolly, and
There's Ringo Klecko. All you need is rock and roll.
that's right. We'll see you next time. Everybody behave yourselves out there, or not. Have a good one.